Elena Vasquez stood at the viewing window of the diplomatic station and watched the stars. She had seen many beautiful things in her 62 years of life. She had watched the sun rise over the mountains of her childhood home in Chile. She had seen Earth from orbit for the first time when she was a young diplomat. She had witnessed the signing of the Unity Accords that finally brought peace to her troubled world. But nothing compared to this view. Thousands of stars stretched out before her, each one a sun with its own worlds, its own stories, its own possibilities. Today, humanity would take its place among those stars. Today, she would sign the documents that would make Earth a full member of the Galactic Consortium. It was the achievement of a lifetime. It was the achievement of many lifetimes. Chancellor, the ceremony will begin in 30 minutes. Elena turned to face her aide, a young man named David Chen. He looked nervous. She understood why. This was the biggest moment in human history, and they were at the center of it. "Thank you, David," she said with a warm smile. "How do I look? Like the leader of a united Earth, ma'am?" Elena laughed softly. She wore a simple blue suit with a small pin on her collar. The pin showed a tiny Earth, the symbol of the unified Terran Alliance. She had chosen simple clothes on purpose. She wanted the galaxy to see that humans did not need fancy decorations to show their worth. The diplomatic station was called Concordance Prime. It floated in neutral space, far from any single species territory. The Galactic Consortium had built it 3,000 years ago as a place where different species could meet and talk without fear. Its halls had seen countless treaties signed and countless wars prevented. Now it would witness humanity's entry into galactic civilization. Elena walked through the corridors toward the Grand Assembly Hall. Alien diplomats from dozens of species watched her pass. Some looked curious, others looked friendly. A few looked at her with open disgust, their faces twisted with contempt. She knew that not everyone wanted humanity to join the consortium. Some species viewed humans as dangerous primitives from a death world. Earth's heavy gravity, violent weather, and dangerous predators made it a harsh place by galactic standards. The fact that humans had evolved there, had thrived there, had built civilization there, frightened certain aliens. They saw humans as monsters wearing the mask of civilization. The Kethvari were the loudest opponents of human membership. They were a proud species with scales like emeralds and eyes like golden coins. They had been part of the consortium for 10,000 years, and they believed that gave them the right to decide who else could join. For the past 5 years, they had argued against humanity at every opportunity. They called humans violent. They called humans unpredictable. They called humans unworthy. Elena did not hate the Kethvari for their opposition. She understood that fear often wore the mask of hatred. She hoped that time and patience would show them that humans wanted only peace and cooperation. The Grand Assembly Hall was enormous. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Tiny wisps of white against the blue artificial sky. Thousands of seats surrounded a central stage, and most of those seats were filled with representatives from across the galaxy. Elena had never seen so many different species in one place. There were beings of every shape and size, every color and texture. Some breathed oxygen like humans. Others wore environmental suits that let them survive outside their native atmospheres. Elena walked to the central stage where the signing table waited. The consortium chancellor, a being called Vorn who resembled a tall silver tree with too many branches, stood ready to welcome her. "Chancellor Vasquez," Vorn said, its voice like wind through leaves. "On behalf of the Galactic Consortium, I welcome you to this historic moment. Today, humanity joins the family of civilized species." "Thank you, Chancellor Vorn," Elena replied. "Humanity is honored to take its place among you. We come in peace and friendship, eager to learn and to share." She meant every word. Her whole life had been dedicated to this moment. She had worked for decades to unite Earth's warring nations. She had spent years building relationships with alien species. She had faced opposition from humans who feared the galaxy and from aliens who feared humanity. But she had never given up. She had always believed that this day would come. Elena sat down at the signing table. The document before her was written in 100 different languages, each version saying the same thing. By signing, humanity agreed to follow consortium law, to settle disputes peacefully, and to contribute to the common good. In return, humanity would gain access to galactic trade, technology, and protection. She picked up the ceremonial pen. It felt heavy in her hand, weighted with the hopes of 8 billion people back on Earth, and billions more on the colony worlds. She leaned forward to sign. The shot came from somewhere high above. Elena felt the impact before she heard the sound. Something punched through her chest with terrible force. She looked down and saw red spreading across her blue suit. The pen fell from her fingers and clattered on the table. She tried to speak, but no words came. She tried to breathe, but her lungs would not obey. The world tilted sideways as she fell from her chair. David was screaming her name. She could hear him as if from very far away. She could see his face above her, tears streaming down his cheeks. She wanted to tell him that it was all right, that everything would be fine, but she could not make her mouth form the words. The last thing Elena Vasquez saw was the stars through the transparent ceiling of the Grand Assembly Hall. The same stars she had watched from her window just an hour before. They were still beautiful. They would always be beautiful. Then there was nothing. The chaos that followed was absolute. Security forces swarmed through the hall, searching for the shooter. Diplomats screamed and ran for cover. Medical teams rushed to the stage, but there was nothing they could do. Chancellor Elena Vasquez, the first leader of a united Earth, was dead. The assassin was caught within minutes. He was Keth Very, a young male with scales the color of poison and eyes full of hate. He did not try to run or hide. He stood proudly as security forces surrounded him. "The vermin will never pollute our consortium," he declared. "Today I have saved galactic civilization from the Death World plague." He was a member of an extremist faction called the Purifiers. They believed that certain species were inherently superior to others, and that humanity was the lowest of the low. They had opposed human membership from the beginning, but no one had thought they would go this far. The assassination was broadcast across human space. Every human on every world saw their chancellor die. They saw her fall. They saw her blood. They saw the alien who killed her standing proud and unashamed. The galaxy held its breath. The experts and diplomats expected humanity to collapse. Every young species reacted the same way when tragedy struck. They fell into grief and chaos. They fought among themselves for power. They withdrew from the galaxy to lick their wounds. The consortium had seen it happen dozens of times before, but humanity did not collapse. In the hours after the assassination, something strange happened. The angry voices that had always divided humanity went quiet. The politicians who had spent their careers fighting each other stopped fighting. The military leaders who had guarded their authority so jealously stepped back and let civilian government continue without interruption. On Earth, billions of people gathered in public spaces. They did not riot. They did not scream for vengeance. They stood together in silence, shoulder to shoulder, watching screens that showed Elena's face. They held candles and flowers. They held each other. On the colony worlds, the same scene repeated. Humans of every nation, every culture, every belief system, stood together in perfect, terrible silence. The aliens watching did not understand. Where was the chaos? Where was the infighting? Where was the collapse that always followed when young species lost their leaders? What the aliens did not understand was that Elena Vasquez had already done her greatest work. She had not just united Earth's governments. She had united Earth's people. She had shown them what they could be when they worked together instead of against each other. She had given them a shared identity, a shared purpose, a shared dream. And now someone had killed that dream in front of the whole galaxy. The Galactic Consortium held an emergency session 2 days after the assassination. They debated what to do about the incident. Some wanted to condemn the Purifiers. Others wanted to pretend nothing had happened. The Kethvari delegation argued that the assassin had acted alone, and that their species bore no responsibility. In the end, the consortium did nothing. They issued a statement expressing regret over the unfortunate event. They promised to investigate the matter. They suggested that humanity might want to reconsider its membership application given the tensions involved. It was a coward's response, and everyone knew it. The human delegation listened to the consortium's statement without expression. Then they stood up and walked out of the assembly hall without saying a word. No protests, no threats, no demands, just silence. On Earth and across the colonies, humans watched the consortium's response. They saw how little their chancellor's life meant to the galaxy. They saw how quickly the aliens dismissed her death as an inconvenience. and still they remained silent. But their silence was not the silence of grief or defeat. It was the silence of a storm gathering on the horizon. It was the silence of something vast and terrible waking up. The galaxy did not understand human silence. They did not know that sometimes, when humans were most angry, they did not shout. They planned. They prepared. They waited. Admiral James Okonkwo, commander of the Terran Defense Fleet, sat alone in his office watching Elena's final moments play again on his screen. He had known her for 30 years. She had been his friend, his mentor, his inspiration. She had talked him out of retiring a dozen times, always reminding him that humanity needed good people in positions of power. Now she was gone, and the galaxy had shown just how little it cared. Okonkwo closed his eyes and made a decision. When he opened them again, there was something cold and hard in his gaze, something that had not been there before. He reached for his communicator and began making calls. There was work to do. The galaxy had made a mistake. They had confused human silence for human weakness. They had confused human patience for human acceptance. They would learn the difference soon enough. 2 weeks passed after the assassination of Chancellor Elena Vasquez. 2 weeks of human silence. 2 weeks that the galaxy completely misunderstood. Ambassador Crixtal of the Maloney Collective was one of the few aliens who actually paid attention to humanity during those weeks. The Maloney were a patient species, slow-moving beings who resembled great stone turtles. They had learned long ago that the most important things often happened in silence. Crixtal watched humanity, and what he saw troubled him deeply. They are not mourning, he reported to his government. They are mobilizing. His superiors did not believe him. The consortium's experts had analyzed the situation and concluded that humanity was experiencing the typical shock response of a young species. The experts predicted that within a month, Earth's fragile unity would shatter. Different factions would fight for power. The colony worlds would declare independence. Humanity would spend the next century putting itself back together, if it survived at all. The experts were wrong. On Earth, the transition of power happened so smoothly that most aliens did not even notice it. Elena Vasquez had prepared for every possibility, including her own death. Her vice-chancellor, a quiet Japanese woman named Yuki Tanaka, stepped into the role without any disruption. There were no power struggles. There were no protests. The government continued to function as if nothing had changed, except everything had changed. Admiral James Okonkwo met with Chancellor Tanaka 3 days after the assassination. They spoke for 6 hours behind closed doors. No one knew exactly what they discussed. But when the meeting ended, both of them looked like they had made peace with something terrible. The next day, Okonkwo activated protocols that had existed only on paper for decades. The Terran Defense Fleet, which had always been scattered across human space for protection and patrol duties, began to quietly gather. Ships that had been assigned to exploration returned to military bases. Cargo vessels were inspected and cleared for potential military support roles. Recruitment centers across all human worlds reported a massive surge in volunteers. None of this appeared on the news. None of this was announced publicly. The galaxy saw only human silence. But beneath that silence, humanity was becoming something it had never been before. For all of Earth's bloody history, humans had never truly been united against a common enemy. There had always been divisions, always been factions that refused to cooperate, always been those who put their own interests above the common good. Now, for the first time, 8 billion humans on Earth and 4 billion more across the colonies all wanted exactly the same thing. The Terran Intelligence Service had always been small compared to other human agencies. Elena Vasquez had believed in diplomacy over spying, in openness over secrets, but she had also been practical enough to maintain a network of agents throughout the galaxy, just in case diplomacy failed. Director Sarah Oyalaran had run that network for 15 years. She was a small woman with gray hair and eyes that seemed to see through walls. When Elena died, Sarah wept in private for exactly 10 minutes. Then she dried her tears and went to work. Her agents were already in place. They had been watching the purifiers for years, tracking their movements, recording their communications, building files on every member. Now Sarah gave them new orders. Find everyone involved in the assassination. Find everyone who knew about it beforehand. Find everyone who helped make it happen. Within a week, her agents had names. Not just the assassin, but his handlers. Not just the Purifier leadership, but their secret supporters within the Kethvari government. Not just the Kethvari, but the consortium officials who had received warnings about the assassination plot and chosen to ignore them. The truth was worse than anyone had imagined. The Purifiers had not acted alone. They had been encouraged and funded by powerful Kethvari who wanted to keep humanity out of the consortium. Those Kethvari had connections to officials within the consortium itself. Officials who believed that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed into galactic civilization. 3 days before the assassination, consortium intelligence had intercepted communications that clearly indicated an attack was being planned. They had forwarded this information to consortium leadership. The leadership had discussed the matter and decided to do nothing. They calculated that a human overreaction to violence would prove their point about human nature being inherently dangerous. They thought a few dead humans would be a small price to pay for keeping the Deathworlders out of the consortium. They had gambled with Elena Vasquez's life, and she had lost. When Director Oyelaran presented this evidence to Chancellor Tanaka and Admiral Okonkwo, neither of them spoke for a long time. The weight of what they were looking at was almost too heavy to bear. Their chancellor had not just been killed by extremists. She had been sacrificed by the very organization she had spent her life trying to join. "What do we do with this?" Chancellor Tanaka asked. "We use it," Admiral Okonkwo replied. "When the time is right." The time was not yet right. Humanity was still preparing, still gathering strength, still waiting. But while humanity waited, the galaxy grew comfortable. 2 weeks of silence had convinced most alien species that the experts were correct. Humanity was broken. Humanity was weak. Humanity was no longer a concern. The Kethvari were the most confident. Their government had officially condemned the assassination, but everyone knew they did not mean it. Important Kethvari openly celebrated Elena's death. The assassin became a hero to millions of young Kethvari who had been taught to fear and hate humanity. The Purifiers grew bolder. They released statements praising the assassination and promising more attacks if humanity ever tried to join the consortium again. They held rallies in Kethvari cities where speakers called for the complete destruction of the human species. They started calling themselves the saviors of civilization. At the end of the second week, Admiral Okonkwo called a meeting of his senior commanders. They gathered aboard his flagship, the carrier Elena Vasquez, which had been renamed just 3 days earlier. The old name had been Terran Unity. The new name was a promise. "The waiting is over," Okonkwo told them. "It's time for the galaxy to learn what human silence means." The next day, the Unified Terran Alliance made a formal announcement. Chancellor Tanaka appeared on screens across the galaxy, her face calm and composed. She spoke in measured tones that gave no hint of the fury burning beneath her words. 3 weeks ago, the Galactic Consortium allowed the assassination of Chancellor Elena Vasquez. In the time since, the consortium has done nothing to bring justice to her killers. The species responsible has celebrated her death. The organization she trusted has protected her murderers. Therefore, effective immediately, the Unified Terran Alliance withdraws its application for consortium membership. We no longer wish to join an organization that values our lives so little. Furthermore, we demand the following: the immediate surrender of all individuals involved in planning, funding, or executing the assassination, a full public accounting of consortium knowledge of the plot before it occurred, and formal recognition of humanity's right to defend itself against those who would harm us. You have 7 days to comply. If these demands are not met, humanity will seek justice through other means. To the Kethvari government and the Purifier organization, we have a separate message. You have taken from us something precious beyond measure. You have killed our hope for peaceful integration into galactic society. You have shown us that some in this galaxy will never accept us, no matter how hard we try. We understand now. We accept the lesson you have taught us. You believe humans are violent and dangerous. You believe we are monsters from a death world. You have spent years telling the galaxy that humanity cannot be trusted, that we are savage animals wearing the mask of civilization. We have always denied these accusations. We have always tried to show our peaceful intentions, our desire for friendship and cooperation. No more. You wanted monsters? You will have them. But understand this. Our fury will not be blind or chaotic. It will be precise. It will be purposeful. It will be patient. We will not destroy your worlds or slaughter your people. We are not what you think we are, but we will take from you something you value even more than territory or lives. We will take your certainty, your confidence, your belief that you are safe. You killed our Chancellor in front of the whole galaxy because you thought we could not stop you, because you thought we would not respond, because you thought you were safe. You were wrong. You have 7 days. Chancellor Tanaka's image faded from screens across the galaxy. In the silence that followed, alien species who had dismissed humanity suddenly found themselves uncertain. The human woman had not screamed or threatened or raged. She had spoken calmly, almost gently, like someone explaining simple facts to a child. That calm was more frightening than any threat could have been. The consortium responded with outrage. How dare these primitive humans make demands? How dare they threaten civilized species? The HFY government called the statement an act of war and began mobilizing their fleet. The purifiers laughed. They released a video showing their leaders mocking Chancellor Tanaka's words. The Deathworlders think they can frighten us, the Purifier Supreme Commander sneered. They forget that we have been traveling the stars while they were still living in caves. Let them come. We will teach them their place in the galaxy. 7 days passed. Humanity did not wait for a response. Humanity had never expected one. On the 8th day, every HFY military communication network went silent at the exact same moment. The blackout lasted only 3 seconds, but when it ended, a single message appeared on every screen, every display, every device in HFY space. The message showed a photograph of Elena Vasquez, smiling warmly at the camera. Beneath the photograph were 3 words in the HFY language. Remember her name. Then the lights went out. Not weapons, not bombs, not the destruction the HFY had expected and prepared for. Just darkness. Every power grid in HFY space failed simultaneously. Every city went dark. Every station lost power. Every ship found its reactors shutting down for no apparent reason. The darkness lasted exactly 60 seconds. Then the power returned, as mysteriously as it had vanished. In those 60 seconds, the galaxy learned something important about humanity. Humans had not spent 2 weeks in shock and grief. They had spent 2 weeks infiltrating every HFY system, planting codes and backdoors, preparing for this exact moment. They had done it so quietly that the HFY had never noticed. The blackout was not an attack. It was a demonstration. It was humanity saying, "We could destroy you if we wanted to. We could shut down your civilization and watch it die in the dark. We could do it right now, and you could not stop us. But we are not doing that. We are giving you a choice. Choose wisely." The HFY government was terrified. Their military was humiliated. Their people were panicking in streets that had been dark for only a minute but might go dark again at any time. The purifiers released another statement, calling the blackout a cowardly attack and demanding the consortium defend them against human aggression. The consortium did not respond. They were too busy discovering that their own systems had been infiltrated too. Human code was everywhere, sleeping, waiting. Every secret they had tried to keep was vulnerable. Every classified communication could be exposed. Humanity had not just penetrated HFY defenses. Humanity had penetrated everyone's defenses. And now the galaxy understood what human silence really meant. It meant the humans were coming, and nothing could stop them. The blackout was only the beginning. In the days that followed, humanity showed the galaxy exactly what controlled fury looked like. It was not the wild destruction the aliens had expected. It was not the savage rampage they had been warned about. It was something far more terrifying. Precision. The HFY had prepared for war. They had gathered their fleets and armed their stations and told their people that the human barbarians would soon attack. They expected missiles and bombs and all the violent chaos they believed humans were capable of. Instead, they got ghosts. The first purifier leader to disappear was Commander Vex Nar, the one who had laughed at Chancellor Tanaka's warning. He vanished from his personal compound on the HFY homeworld, a compound protected by 300 elite guards and the most advanced security systems money could buy. The guards found nothing. The security systems showed nothing. Vexener was simply there one moment and gone the next. In his place, they found a single photograph of Elena Vasquez and a note written in perfect HFY script. First of many. Panic spread through the purifier organization. If the humans could take Vexnar from his fortress, they could take anyone. Leaders who had boldly proclaimed their hatred of humanity suddenly became very quiet. Some tried to run, to hide on remote worlds or aboard ships in deep space. It did not matter. The humans found them all. Over the next 2 weeks, 17 senior purifiers vanished without a trace. Each disappearance was impossible according to everything the Kethvari knew about warfare and infiltration. Each one left behind only a photograph and a numbered note. The galaxy watched in amazement. Human special forces were doing things that should not have been possible. They were moving through Kethvari space like shadows, bypassing every defense, striking without warning, and vanishing without pursuit. The Kethvari military threw everything they had at finding and stopping these human operatives. They failed completely. While the Purifier leadership disappeared one by one, the human fleet moved into position. Admiral Okonkwo commanded 300 ships, a tiny force compared to the thousands of vessels the Kethvari could field. The experts predicted that the humans would be destroyed if they tried to engage in direct combat. But Okonkwo did not engage in direct combat. He had no intention of fighting the Kethvari fleet. Instead, his ships did something unexpected. They began dismantling Kethvari infrastructure, not with weapons, with precision. Human engineers had spent years studying galactic technology. They understood how alien systems worked better than most aliens did. Now they used that knowledge in ways no one had anticipated. A small human ship would approach a Kethvari communication relay. Instead of destroying it, human technicians would board the station, access its systems, and simply turn it off. Then they would leave, taking key components with them. The station looked intact, but it would never work again. The same thing happened to power distribution hubs, food processing facilities, water treatment plants, transportation networks. The humans did not destroy these things. They disabled them with surgical precision, taking just enough pieces to make repair impossible without complete replacement. The Kethvari economy began to collapse, not from destruction, but from paralysis. Ships could not communicate. Factories could not operate. Cities could not receive supplies. Everything that made modern civilization function simply stopped working. The Kethvari fleet finally caught a human strike team in the act of disabling a major power station. The Kethvari commander was triumphant. Now they would show the galaxy how real warriors dealt with human infiltrators. The human team surrendered without a fight. The Kethvari commander did not know what to do. He had expected desperate resistance. He had expected to kill humans and prove Kethvari superiority. Instead, the humans calmly put down their weapons and allowed themselves to be captured. "Take us to your government," the human team leader said. "We have a message to deliver." The captured humans were brought before the Kethvari High Council. They expected to see fear in the humans' eyes. They expected pleading, or defiance, or hatred. Instead, the human team leader smiled politely and asked permission to speak. "You have permission to beg for your lives." The High Counselor sneered. "I'm not here to beg," the human replied. "I'm here to explain what happens next." She pulled a small device from her pocket. The guards raised their weapons, but the device did nothing harmful. It simply projected a hologram into the center of the council chamber. The hologram showed documents, thousands of documents, communications between purifier leaders and members of the Kethvari government, financial records showing government money flowing to extremist organizations, military reports proving that the Kethvari fleet had deliberately allowed the assassination plot to proceed, personal messages from high counselors celebrating Elena Vasquez's death. "Your government funded the purifiers," the human said. "Your military protected them. Your leaders knew about the assassination and did nothing to stop it. We have proof of all of this." The High Council was silent. "But wait," the human continued. "There's more." The hologram changed. Now it showed communications from the Galactic Consortium itself, warnings about the assassination that had been deliberately ignored, discussions about how human overreaction would justify excluding them from the consortium forever, cold calculations about acceptable losses. The consortium knew too, the human said. "They let our chancellor die because they thought it would solve their human problem. They gambled with her life, and now they have to pay for that gamble." She smiled again, but there was no warmth in it. "We're going to release all of this information to the entire galaxy. Every species will see how the Kethvari and the consortium really operate." Every species will know that when they join the consortium, their lives mean nothing if political convenience demands their deaths. The High Counselor found his voice. You would not dare. The consortium would destroy you. The consortium can barely function right now, the human replied. Have you not noticed? Your systems are not the only ones we infiltrated. While you were watching your infrastructure fail, we were doing the same thing to every species that supported your government's actions. The consortium is paralyzed. They cannot respond to anything because they do not know which of their systems they can trust. She paused to let that sink in. In 3 hours, the evidence goes public. In 6 hours, the galaxy will know the truth. In 12 hours, the consortium will face the biggest crisis in its history. And somewhere in there, the HFY people will realize that their government sold out their honor and their reputation to kill one woman who only wanted peace. The High Counselor's scales had turned pale. What do you want? Justice, the human said simply. Surrender everyone involved in the assassination. Open your records to independent investigation. Accept responsibility for what your government did. And if we refuse? The human shrugged. Then the evidence goes public anyway, and you deal with the consequences. Your economy is already collapsing. Your military cannot find us, cannot stop us, cannot even slow us down. How long do you think your government will last once your people know the truth? The High Council deliberated for 2 hours. In the end, they had no choice. The evidence was overwhelming. The damage was already catastrophic. Fighting any longer would only make things worse. The HFY government announced its full cooperation with the human demands. They would surrender the purifier leaders who had been captured. They would open their records. They would accept responsibility. The human team leader nodded in satisfaction. Then she said something that surprised everyone. Thank you. Humanity appreciates your cooperation. We want you to know that this is not about revenge. This is about justice. We do not hate the HFY people. We hate what your government did. There is a difference. She was escorted away to rejoin her team. The HFY guards who walked beside her could not understand. They had been taught that humans were savage monsters who lived only for violence and destruction. But this human had shown them something different. She had shown them discipline, intelligence, and restraint. She had shown them that humans could be terrifying not because they lost control, but because they never lost control. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. The consortium's complicity in the assassination, the HFY government's funding of extremists, the lies that had been told to justify excluding humanity from galactic civilization. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Species that had trusted the consortium began to question that trust. Governments that had believed HFY propaganda began to reconsider. Individuals who had feared humanity began to wonder if they had been manipulated. And in the chaos, something remarkable happened. Other species began reaching out to humanity. Not the powerful ones who benefited from the consortium's corruption, but the smaller ones, the ones who had always felt marginalized and ignored, the ones who had seen how the consortium treated outsiders and worried they might be next. We watched how you responded to this tragedy. The ambassador from the Maloney Collective told Chancellor Tanaka. We expected rage and destruction. Instead, we saw precision and purpose. We saw a species that could have burned everything down but chose not to. We would like to learn more about humanity. Similar messages arrived from dozens of species. They were curious about these strange deathworlders who fought without destroying, who conquered without killing, who won without gloating. Humanity had come to the galaxy wanting to join. Now the galaxy was coming to humanity wanting to understand. But there was still one piece of unfinished business. The purifier leaders had been captured, but they had not yet faced justice. They sat in human custody, waiting to learn their fate. Many expected execution. Some expected torture. All expected the savage revenge that the galaxy had always said humans were capable of. They were wrong about that too. Admiral Okonkwo visited the prisoners personally. He stood before them, a tall man with gray at his temples and cold fire in his eyes. You killed someone I loved, he said. You killed the best person I have ever known. You killed the hope of an entire species. The purifier prisoners braced themselves for what would come next. So we are going to put you on trial, Okonkwo continued. A public trial, broadcast across the galaxy. You will have lawyers. You will be able to present your defense. Every piece of evidence will be examined openly. And when you are convicted, as you will be, your sentence will be determined by law, not by my anger." The prisoners stared at him in confusion. "This is not mercy," Okonkwo explained. "This is justice. There is a difference. Mercy would be letting you go. Justice is making sure that everyone in the galaxy sees exactly what you did and exactly how we respond. Justice is proving that humanity does not need to become monsters to deal with monsters." He turned and walked away, leaving the prisoners in stunned silence. They had expected human fury to look like fire and blood. They had not expected it to look like courts and evidence and the rule of law. They had not expected it to be so much worse than violence, because violence could be survived. Violence could be forgotten. But the truth, spoken plainly for all the galaxy to hear, would follow them forever. Human fury was patient. Human fury was precise. Human fury was absolutely relentless. And the galaxy was only beginning to understand what that meant. The trial was held aboard a human station in neutral space. Humanity had considered using an alien facility to show fairness. But in the end, they decided that human justice should happen on human territory. The galaxy was welcome to watch, but humanity would run the proceedings. Over 4 billion beings across 1,000 worlds tuned in to watch the broadcast. It was the largest audience in galactic history. Everyone wanted to see how the Deathworlders would handle their moment of power over those who had wronged them. The courtroom was simple and dignified. No grand decorations, no intimidating architecture, just clean lines and good lighting and rows of seats for observers from across the galaxy. The defendants sat in a secure area at the front, visible to everyone. There were 23 of them. 17 Purifier leaders captured during the operations in Kethvari space. 4 Kethvari government officials who had funded and protected the extremists. 2 consortium administrators who had received warnings about the assassination and buried them. Each defendant was provided with a lawyer. Not human lawyers, but attorneys from neutral species who had no stake in the outcome. Humanity wanted the galaxy to see that these trials would be fair, truly fair. Not the kind of show trials that authoritarian regimes use to give a thin cover of legitimacy to predetermined verdicts. The lead prosecutor was a woman named Maya Rodriguez. She was 60 years old, with silver hair and a quiet voice that somehow filled the entire courtroom. She had spent her career prosecuting the worst criminals on Earth, the ones who committed atrocities and felt no remorse. She knew how to present evidence clearly and let the facts speak for themselves. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Maya Rodriguez did not shout or make dramatic speeches. She simply presented the evidence, piece by piece, document by document, testimony by testimony. She showed communications between Purifier leaders planning the assassination. She showed financial records tracing the money from Kethvari government accounts to extremist organizations. She showed warnings that had been sent to consortium officials and the replies dismissing those warnings as unimportant. She showed a video of the Purifier Supreme Commander practicing his speech celebrating Elena Vasquez's death, recorded 2 days before the assassination happened. The video proved beyond any doubt that this had not been a lone extremist acting on impulse. It had been a coordinated operation with support at the highest levels of Kethvari society. The defense lawyers tried their best. They argued that their clients were acting on sincere beliefs about protecting their species from human contamination. They argued that the evidence had been obtained illegally during human infiltration operations. They argued that humanity was biased and could not provide fair judgment. Maya Rodriguez addressed each argument calmly and thoroughly. Yes, the defendants sincerely believed humans were dangerous. That belief did not excuse murder. Yes, some evidence had been obtained through infiltration. That evidence was corroborated by documents the defendants themselves had created. Yes, humanity had reason to be angry. That was why the trial was being held in the open, with neutral observers, with defense attorneys from other species. "We are not asking you to take our word for anything," Maya said in her closing statement. "We have shown you the evidence. We have let you examine it yourselves. We have given the defendants every opportunity to present their side. Now you must decide what you saw." The jury was composed of beings from 12 different species, none of them human or Kethvari. They deliberated for 4 days. When they returned, their verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts, the gallery erupted in noise. Observers from across the galaxy reacted with shock, relief, anger, or satisfaction depending on their sympathies. The defendants sat in stunned silence. Some had believed until the very end that they would be protected, that the consortium would intervene, that humanity would be forced to release them. Now they faced the reality of what they had done. Judge Thomas Adeyemi, the elderly Nigerian man who had presided over the trial, called for order. When the room finally quieted, he addressed the convicted prisoners. You have been found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, murder in the first degree, and crimes against peace. These are among the most serious charges that human law recognizes. In our history, such crimes have often been punished with death. The prisoners tensed, waiting for the sentence they expected. But humanity has learned something in our long and bloody history, the judge continued. We have learned that killing murderers does not bring back their victims. We have learned that vengeance does not heal wounds. We have learned that true justice is not about making the guilty suffer as much as possible. It is about ensuring that such crimes never happen again. He paused, letting his words settle. Therefore, this court sentences each of you to life imprisonment on a human rehabilitation world. You will live out your days in humane conditions, with adequate food and shelter and medical care. You will not be tortured or abused. You will be treated with the basic dignity that all sentient beings deserve. Some of the prisoners looked relieved, others looked confused. This was not what they had expected. However, the judge continued, your imprisonment will have a purpose beyond mere containment. You will be required to learn. Every day, you will study the life and works of Elena Vasquez. You will read her speeches and her writings. You will learn about her childhood, her struggles, her dreams. You will come to understand the person you killed, not the symbol or the threat you imagined, but the real human being. Now the prisoners looked disturbed. Some of them would rather have faced execution than what the judge was describing. This is your sentence. To spend the rest of your lives confronting the reality of what you destroyed. Perhaps you will never feel remorse. Perhaps you will die still believing you were right. But you will never again be able to pretend that Elena Vasquez was not real, that she was not a person with hopes and fears and loved ones. You will know her better than you know yourselves. The judge turned to address the gallery and the billions watching across the galaxy. To those who expected humanity to respond with violence and destruction, I say this: you do not understand us. You see our capacity for war and assume that is all we are. You see our survival on a harsh world and assume we are nothing but predators. But humanity did not survive because we were the strongest or the most violent. We survived because we learned to cooperate, to build, to create systems of law and justice that allowed us to live together despite our differences. Our greatest achievements have never been in destruction, but in construction. Today, we have shown the galaxy what human justice looks like. It looks like evidence and due process and fair trials. It looks like punishments that serve a purpose beyond mere revenge. It looks like the rule of law applied even to those who have hurt us most deeply. This is who we really are. This is what the purifiers and their supporters tried to destroy. They failed. Judge Adeyemi struck his gavel one final time, and the trial was over. The reaction across the galaxy was immediate and overwhelming. Species that had believed human propaganda about savage Deathworlders found themselves questioning everything they had been told. They had expected blood and fire. They had witnessed justice and restraint. The gap between expectation and reality was so vast that it forced beings across the galaxy to reconsider their assumptions. The consortium faced a crisis of legitimacy. The evidence presented at trial proved that their leaders had knowingly allowed an assassination to proceed. They had sacrificed an innocent woman for political convenience. Now they had to face their own populations who wondered if they might be sacrificed just as easily. Several species formally withdrew from the consortium within days of the verdict. They cited loss of trust, failure of leadership, fundamental questions about the organization's values. More species began discussing whether to follow. The Kethvari homeworld experienced massive protests. Citizens who had been taught to hate and fear humanity watched the trial and saw something that contradicted everything they believed. They saw humans be fair to their enemies. They saw humans show restraint when they had every reason for vengeance. They saw humans prove through actions that they were not the monsters Kethvari propaganda had described. Young Kethvari especially began questioning what they had been taught. They went online to learn more about humanity. They discovered art and music and literature from Earth. They found human philosophy that spoke of peace and cooperation. They realized that they had been lied to by their own government for their entire lives. Admiral Okonkwo held a press conference after the verdict. He stood before cameras broadcasting to the entire galaxy and spoke directly to those watching. Some of you expected us to destroy the Kethvari, to glass their worlds and slaughter their people in revenge for what they did. I will not pretend that part of me did not want exactly that. Elena Vasquez was my friend for 30 years. When she died, something inside me wanted to make everyone responsible suffer as much as I was suffering. He paused, his face showing the weight of those feelings. But Elena would not have wanted that. She spent her entire life trying to bring people together, trying to prove that cooperation was better than conflict, trying to show that we could be more than our worst impulses. If I had responded to her death by becoming everything she fought against, I would have betrayed everything she believed in. He straightened his shoulders. So we did this instead. We found the guilty parties through investigation, not massacre. We proved their guilt through evidence, not torture. We punished them through imprisonment, not execution. We showed the galaxy that human fury does not have to mean human savagery. This does not mean we are weak. It does not mean we will allow ourselves to be attacked without consequence. If anyone tries to harm humanity again, they will face the same response: relentless, precise, and unavoidable justice. But we will not become monsters to fight monsters. We will not abandon our values because others abandon theirs. We are better than that. Elena taught us to be better than that. He looked directly into the camera. To the Kethvari people, I say this: we do not hate you. We hate what your government did. We hate the lies you were told about us. But we know that most of you had nothing to do with the assassination. Most of you were victims of propaganda and manipulation just as much as we were victims of violence. Humanity does not want war with the Kethvari. We want what we have always wanted: peaceful coexistence, fair treatment, and the chance to prove that we are not the monsters you were taught to fear. The door is open. It will remain open. When you are ready to walk through it, we will be waiting. He stepped back from the podium, and the press conference ended. Across the galaxy, beings of every species discussed what they had witnessed. Some refused to change their minds about humanity. Some were too invested in the old order to accept the new reality. But many, perhaps most, found themselves rethinking everything they thought they knew. Humanity had been tested, and they had responded in ways no one expected. Not with the violence their enemies predicted, but with something more powerful: the moral authority that came from doing the right thing, even when they had every excuse to do wrong. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. And in a prison cell on a distant human world, a purifier leader began reading about the life of Elena Vasquez. He did not want to. He wanted to maintain his hatred, his certainty that he had done the right thing. But day after day, he learned more about the woman he had helped kill. He learned about her childhood in Chile, growing up during Earth's final wars. He learned about her years as a diplomat, patiently building bridges between former enemies. He learned about her dreams for humanity's place in the galaxy. He learned that she had specifically argued against harsh treatment for aliens who opposed human membership. She had said that fear and hatred came from ignorance, and that the solution was understanding, not punishment. She had been advocating for beings like him, even as beings like him plotted her murder. The purifier leader did not cry. He had forgotten how. But something inside him cracked, just a little, and began to leak. This was human justice: patient, precise, inescapable, and far more terrible than any execution could ever be. 1 year had passed since the assassination of Chancellor Elena Vasquez. The galaxy had changed more in that year than it had in the previous century. The diplomatic station hung in space like a silver flower, its petals reaching out to embrace the stars. It was called Vasquez Station, and it had been built in just 8 months by a coalition of species working together for the first time. Human engineers had designed it. Maloney craftsmen had shaped its hull. Technicians from a dozen different worlds had installed its systems. It was a monument to what cooperation could achieve, and it was about to witness the birth of something new. Chancellor Yuki Tanaka stood at the same viewing window where Elena Vasquez had once stood, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. So many ships, so many species, so many beings who had traveled incredible distances to be here today. She would be proud, Admiral Okonkwo said, standing beside her. She would be amazed. Tanaka replied. She spent her whole life working towards something like this. She never imagined it would happen so fast. The Galactic Consortium still existed, but it was a shadow of what it had been. More than half its member species had withdrawn in the year since the trial. Some had joined the new alliance humanity was building. Others had chosen independence. A few were still deciding. The species that remained in the consortium were mostly the ones who had benefited from its corruption. They clung to the old order because they feared what the new order might bring, but their influence was fading with each passing day. The new alliance had no official name yet. People called it different things depending on where they came from. The Coalition, the New Way, the Vasquez Alliance. Today, the founding members would finally decide what to call themselves and what principles would guide their cooperation. The ceremony began in the main hall of the station. Representatives from 37 species had gathered to sign the founding charter. They sat in a great circle, facing each other as equals. There was no elevated platform for more important species. There were no special privileges for older civilizations. Everyone was equal in this new order. Chancellor Tanaka rose to address the gathering. 1 year ago, humanity came to the galaxy with hope in our hearts and peace in our intentions. We wanted to join the community of civilized species. We wanted to learn from those who came before us and share what we had learned ourselves. We believed that cooperation was better than conflict, that friendship was better than fear. We were rejected, not because of anything we had done, but because of what we are, because we come from a harsh world, because our history is marked by violence, because some believed that beings like us could never truly be civilized. Then our chancellor, the best person I have ever known, was murdered in front of the whole galaxy. She was killed by extremists who feared what we represented. She was sacrificed by institutions that should have protected her. In that moment, humanity faced a choice. We could respond with the violence everyone expected. We could prove every terrible thing the galaxy believed about us. We could burn everything down and call it justice. We chose differently. We chose to prove that we are not what they said we are. We chose to show that human fury could be channeled into something other than destruction. We chose to build instead of destroy, to unite instead of conquer, to demonstrate through our actions that the galaxy's fears were unfounded. Today, we stand in a station named for the woman who died for that vision. We stand with friends from dozens of worlds who saw how humanity responded to tragedy and decided they wanted to be part of whatever we were building. We stand at the beginning of something that Elena Vasquez dreamed about but never lived to see. Tanaka paused, looking around the circle at the representatives who had come so far. This alliance will be different from what came before. We will not have a hierarchy of species, with some considered more important than others. We will not ignore threats to our members because intervening would be inconvenient. We will not sacrifice lives for political advantage. We will treat each other with respect and honesty. We will settle our disputes through dialogue and law. We will protect those who cannot protect themselves. We will remember that every being in this circle has equal worth and equal rights. This is what Elena Vasquez believed. This is what she died for. This is what we will build in her memory. She sat down, and the representatives began to speak. The Maloney ambassador talked about watching humanity respond to the assassination and realizing that everything he had been taught about Deathworlders was wrong. The representative from a small species called the Trill described how the consortium had ignored their requests for help against pirates for decades, while humanity had sent ships within days of learning about their problem. Others shared similar stories, similar revelations, similar hopes for what this new alliance might become. Then the Kethvari ambassador rose to speak. A hush fell over the hall. The Kethvari were not founding members of the alliance. They were here today because they had asked to be, because they wanted to say something to the beings they had wronged. Ambassador Thelvex was old. His scales faded to pale green with age. He had opposed human membership in the consortium years ago. He had believed every terrible thing his government said about Deathworlders. He had been wrong, and he knew it. "I come to ask forgiveness," he said. "Not on behalf of those who planned the assassination. They are beyond forgiveness. I come on behalf of the Kethvari people, who were lied to by their own leaders, who were taught to fear and hate beings they had never met, who allowed themselves to believe that murder could be justified. We were wrong. We were deeply, terribly wrong. When the assassination happened, most Kethvari celebrated. We thought we had saved ourselves from dangerous monsters. When humanity responded with justice instead of vengeance, we did not understand. We thought it must be a trick, a deception, a temporary restraint before the real violence began. A year has passed. The violence never came. Instead, we watched humans rebuild their alliance with species from across the galaxy. We watched them offer help to those in need without demanding anything in return. We watched them prove through countless small actions that they meant what they said about peace and cooperation. Meanwhile, our own society fell apart. Our economy collapsed. Our government was overthrown by citizens who finally saw the truth. We lost everything we had because we based our civilization on lies and fear. Now we come to ask if there is a place for us in this new alliance. We do not deserve such generosity. We have done nothing to earn it, but we ask anyway, because we have finally learned what Elena Vasquez tried to teach the galaxy, that hatred destroys those who carry it more than those it is directed at. The old ambassador bowed his head. If you reject us, we will understand. If you demand reparations, we will pay them. If you need more time to trust us, we will wait. We ask only that you keep the door open. As Admiral Okonkwo promised a year ago, he sat down, and silence filled the hall. Chancellor Tanaka looked around the circle. She saw anger on some faces, suspicion on others. The Kethvari had caused immense suffering. They had killed humanity's beloved leader. They had funded extremists and spread hate for decades. Forgiving them would be hard. But she also saw something else on many faces. Hope, curiosity, the desire to prove that this new alliance was truly different from what came before. She rose again. The question of Kethvari membership will be voted on by all founding members, she said. But first, I want to share what I believe Elena Vasquez would say if she were here. She would say that hatred is a cycle that can only be broken by someone choosing to step off. She would say that the Kethvari people are not responsible for the actions of extremists they never supported. She would say that turning away beings who genuinely seek redemption would make us exactly like the consortium we replaced. She was murdered by Kethvari extremists, but she would not want us to punish an entire species for the actions of a few. She would want us to offer them the same chance at friendship that she offered to everyone. That is my position. Let the vote proceed. The vote was close. Species that had suffered under Kethvari aggression voted against. Species that had never had contact with the Kethvari mostly voted in favor. In the end, the Kethvari were accepted into the alliance by a margin of 3 votes. Ambassador Thelvex wept openly when the results were announced. He had lived long enough to see his people nearly destroy themselves through hatred. Now he was living to see them given a second chance. We will not waste this opportunity, he promised. We will spend the rest of our existence proving we deserve it. The ceremony continued. The founding charter was signed by all 37 species, with space left for the Kethvari to add their signature once their membership was finalized. The alliance was given a name, the Coalition of United Worlds. It was a simple name, but it said everything that needed to be said. As the ceremony ended, Admiral Okonkwo stepped forward to deliver the final address. 1 year ago, I stood over the body of my friend and thought about revenge. I wanted to make someone pay for what had been done. I wanted the galaxy to burn for taking Elena from us. But then I remembered something she told me years ago when I was young and angry about some injustice I have long since forgotten. She said that the measure of a person is not what they do when it is easy to be good. It is what they do when they have every reason to be cruel. Humanity had every reason to be cruel this past year. We had been attacked without provocation. We had been rejected without cause. We had been shown that the galaxy did not value our lives or our dreams. We chose kindness anyway. We chose justice over revenge, cooperation over conquest, hope over hate. Not because we are weak or naive, but because that is who we want to be. Because that is who Elena taught us to be. Today, we stand in a place named for her, surrounded by friends who joined us because of how we responded to her death. Today, we welcomed into our alliance the very species that killed her, because she would have wanted us to offer redemption to those who seek it. This is humanity's fury. Not fire and blood, but courtrooms and alliances. Not destruction, but construction. Not hate, but the absolute refusal to become the monsters others expected us to be. Elena Vasquez died believing in what we could become. Today, we became it. And tomorrow, we will become something even better. The galaxy tried to break us. Instead, they gave us a cause worth fighting for. They gave us allies who share our values. They gave us a chance to prove that the universe does not belong to the cruel and the powerful, but to those who choose to be kind when they have every excuse not to be. We will honor Elena's memory not with monuments or speeches, but with our actions. Every species we help, every conflict we prevent, every life we save will be a testament to what she believed. Welcome to the Coalition of United Worlds. Welcome to the future. The hall erupted in applause that echoed across the stars. And somewhere, in that vast and indifferent universe, the spirit of Elena Vasquez smiled down at the children she had left behind. They had learned well. They had honored her sacrifice. They had proven that humanity was worthy of the stars, not through conquest or destruction, but through something far more powerful. The courage to be better than their pain. This was humanity's legacy. This was Elena's gift. The galaxy would never be the same.